Hello everyone, and welcome to Plane Time number 28. I'm Ron Timmermans, one of the many hosts for the Florida Aviation Network, and I'm delighted that you've decided to join us today. Plane Time is all about making you and me safer pilots and looking at safety in aviation. We've already had two fine segments this morning with Mr. John Goglia, hosted by Ben Coleman, my colleague, and now the third segment we have a new guest. That is a very unique individual as well. His name is Brandon Gardner. Brandon is a resident now of the Orlando area and a business owner. Brandon finished his degree at University of Central Florida in business and worked in various opportunities for a while, and then decided to take the big leap and join the aviation industry and develop his own business. He is the owner of Central Florida Air Charters, a Part 135 operation, and he also is the owner of the Premier Flight Solutions, a flight training and aircraft management company also based at Orlando Executive Airport. Brandon, thank you for joining me today. It's good to have you back again. You've been with Florida Aviation Network on previous broadcasts before, but it's always good to have you back and get a little different perspective from you on the industry and safety and the like. So a little bit more about Brandon. He's been in the flight training business, or he's been a pilot for over 10 years in the flight training business for the 6 years that you've owned these businesses and the like. 4,000 hours total, 3,000 of which is as an instructor. So you've been a lot of time in the right seat. So I remember one of our colleagues, Rod Machado, a pretty well-known flight instructor, said the success for a flight instructor sitting in the right seat of the airplane is to learn how to perspire only on the right side of your face so you don't make your students nervous. Have you perfected that?
There's much truth to that.
Yeah, indeed there is. So 3,000 hours of flight training. Brandon is a commercial pilot, aircraft, single and multi-engine, a CFI, of course, and an MEI, and recently type-rated in the Cessna Mustang. Mm-hmm. Congratulations. That's really good. That's wonderful. Quite a series of accomplishments, and very successful in business in the 6 years operating out of Orlando Executive Airport, where every time you go out to fly, it seems like it's anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes waiting in the conga line for the takeoff clearance. But that's just part of flying in a busy airspace of Central Florida.
That's a good thing.
Yes, indeed it is. So, Brandon, you've been in aviation and particularly in flight training for quite some time now. I had a lot of exposure to clients teaching them and the market. What would you say is the state of the market in aviation, or more specifically in flight training right now? Your thoughts?
Well, it's been a very interesting shift in the last few years, and I think in order to explain how it is today, we really need to go back and look at kind of the post-COVID era of flying. Because believe it or not, the airline industry dictates the trickle-down effect to all other aspects of flying, your 135 flying, your 91 flying, and of course your flight training. So if we kind of rewind a couple years and we look at COVID and the major hiring boom that the airlines went through, that would hire anybody and everybody that had 1,500 hours and checked all the boxes, you know, those days aren't here anymore. The market has changed. It's slowed down significantly. We're kind of on the opposite side of the bell curve now from what we saw those years ago, and it's affecting the 135 market in terms of employment. It's affecting the 91 market in terms of employment, and it's of course affecting the flight training world in terms of employment.
We're talking about the change from 2020, 2021, the height of the COVID season, if you will, to today. And so you've seen a significant market swing. Huh?
That's right. So things have changed. You know, the hiring at the airlines has slowed down, which has slowed down the hiring at your 135 operators, and it slowed down the hiring at the flight instructor level. You know, what happened was during the boom, it kind of created a vacuum at the top. So your airlines absorbed everybody from your charter companies that were looking to take the next step. Your charter companies absorbed everybody who was a flight instructor and met the minimums for 135 PIC or SIC, and it left a huge vacancy down at the flight instructor level. So for the last few years, it's been very easy to get a job as a flight instructor, and now I think most people that are in the market, most instructors that are walking out of school with a fresh, wet CFI certificate saying, "Hi, please hire me, I've got 250 hours," it's very difficult to get a job.
I'm sure it is. Back in the day, just 5 years ago, a CFI got to the magic 1,500 hours, which they often do, and almost immediately they could go to work for an airline feeder, right?
Regional carrier.
Regional carrier. And then because there was vacancies there, because those pilots had moved up to the major carriers, right? And not too long after they were in the right seat at a major carrier, they would get a chance to move to the left seat. And so the progression was really great then for pilots. But that left, at the time, a void in the local CFIs at the airport, at your local airport. And there was a rush of pilots to try and say, hey, I want to get in on this great industry, and I want to learn how to fly and the like. And so there was lots of potential students, not as many CFIs in them.
That's right.
But that has changed significantly now because what? Airlines decided they've got enough pilots?
Yep. The brakes have been pumped. The hiring has stopped. It's very, very difficult to get hired on by a regional airline, even with exceeding the qualifications, because the movement has just slowed down significantly. So it kind of begs the question as how do we get a job in this business? And most people's first job in aviation is a flight instructor. And so I'm here to talk about today, some tips to do that, and some things I noticed from an employer's perspective that will set yourself apart from everybody else.
So an audience that we might be speaking to for the next few minutes are CFIs or potential CFIs.
Absolutely.
Here's how you break into the industry.
Absolutely.
And this is from the perspective of someone who hires CFIs.
That's correct.
In a flight training environment. So what better person to tell us about how to get your foot in the door?
That's right.
Please tell us.
Well, for starters, you have to be focused on making a quality product. Your number one goal as a flight instructor should be producing the best pilots that you could possibly produce, because the race to 1,500 hours doesn't matter as much as it did 3 years ago. You reach 1,500 hours as an instructor, and there's nowhere to go. So what do? Is you keep teaching. So what I'm looking for is folks who are dedicated to the business of teaching, and they're producing high-quality candidates. They have a very high pass rate, and they care deeply about the safety of this job. Okay, number two is diversification. I get probably a half a dozen emails a week of people that say, here's my resume, I've got 251 hours, I just got my CFI certificate, please hire me, I'm extremely passionate about teaching. Well, no, you're not. You've never done it before. So you have to be in this market before you can sell yourself as being a dedicated and a passionate individual. Of course, we're all dedicated in taking the steps necessary to get to that point, but you're now competing with your peers for a job. So what do I mean by diversification? That's a very loaded question. That doesn't mean going from a 152 to a 172 and amassing an extra 500 hours in the pattern. It's not going to set you apart from anybody. It doesn't mean going from a 172 to a Cherokee or an Archer and having 2 or 3 different airframes. It means taking steps from a professional standpoint and investing in yourself to build your resume to make yourself desirable. Getting a high performance endorsement, getting an additional rating, getting your CFII or your MEI, going to learn how to fly a seaplane or a glider, getting some time in the right seat of a turbine aircraft or a turboprop, doing anything that you can to set yourself apart from the other people that have the same identical qualifications that you do.
So you mentioned 250 hours. That, as I recall, is the minimum to get a commercial certificate, right? So after the private certificate that someone might get after 40 to 60, what's the average now, 70 hours,
70,
something like
75.
that? 70 to 75 hours of flight time, then you get your private certificate, and then you can begin working on an instrument rating right away with a private certificate, but you have to get at least 250 hours of flight time before you can qualify for commercial certificate. And it's the commercial certificate then that allows you to train to become a CFI, certificated flight instructor. And so Brandon is, of course, in a business where he hires qualified and quality CFIs to work for him and deliver training to his customers. So just getting to 250 hours, getting your commercial certificate, and then soon thereafter getting a CFI add-on to that is good, and it speaks well of people that have a dedication or a desire to rise in this industry. But where the rubber meets the road is the experience of sitting in that right seat, perspiring just on the right side of your face, and delivering quality instruction to the clients with whom they fly. And so I imagine you've had some positive experiences with the CFIs that you've hired, and maybe some that are not quite so good. How do you differentiate between the quality instructor that you hire? How do you assure that you hire a quality instructor, not just one that's diversified?
One of the things that I like to see most when I go to hire somebody is I like to see some sort of experience in a professional setting outside of aviation. Oh. And what I mean by that is, I like to think that with enough time and money, I can make anybody a great pilot. I can. But the reality is I can't make you a great person. I can't teach you how to deal with people in a way that some sort of other professional setting would do. And that's very important to me. That's very important to any employer, is to manage the relationship of the clients. So I always like to see that. Another thing that I'm always looking for is just a true dedication to the job. If I'm looking at your resume and I see that you're changing jobs every 6 to 8 months and you've got 15 different experiences listed on your resume, that's not a very good sign.
Not very stable.
That tells me that you're going to be with me until the next door opens. So I'm looking for stability. I'm looking for long-term dedication. And I'm really looking for just a desire to share the passion and to teach and pass along everything to the next generation of pilots.
So when you get a potential hire that you're looking at, considering for hiring as a CFI, do you go for a check flight with that person, I would imagine?
I do, assuming that I like the qualifications. First I talk to you on the ground. I kind of want to see what your goals are. There's a lot of people out there who don't want to go to the airlines. And they like being home a lot, and they have a family to raise, or for some other reason they just don't want to be on the road so much. You're the first person that I want to talk to, because I know you're going to be here for a long time, and I know that I can invest in you and get a good return. And I can move you up into the airplanes that we manage. I can put you in the right seat of the King Airs. I can get you in the Mustang. I can get you in the other jets. I'm all about providing as much help as I can to get you in a better spot to when you do want to move on, you're ready to move on, and you've got a solid backing, and you're differentiated from all of the other people that are looking to take the next step with you.
Indeed. Do you ever look at a potential potential hirer as from their, what is their aspect or what is their perspective on safety? How do you determine that as a potential employer of them?
Well, safety is the number one most important aspect of this business. It should be in any business, but this one particularly, because you know what we go through and you know that the risks that we take. So, I can kind of gauge your safety record by how serious I see you take your job. What is your pass rate as an instructor if you've been teaching already? If you've got a 40 or a 50% pass rate, well, what's going on there? Where is the gap coming from? Because you're an instructor as well, Ron, you know very well there is a huge difference between being able to check the boxes that state that you meet the minimum standards as outlined by the FAA to get this certificate or rating versus you are a safe and proficient pilot that I can trust you will keep the person in the left seat safe.
So you've got a very short period of time to make that evaluation then as the employer. You look at the resume, you look at their experience level, probably 1 or maybe 2 flights with that person. What do you specifically look for when you're flying with that person? I imagine they're sitting in the right seat, you're in the left seat, and you're evaluating their ability to deliver instruction.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, one of the most important qualities in gauging that is your ability to react under pressure and adapt to the situation. We've all flown enough to where it's very simple to get into the airplane and fly from point A to point B and nothing goes wrong. But it's not those moments that measure the outcome. It's not those moments that measure how the situation is going to end when things don't go as planned. So one of the things that I will always do in a flight interview is I create some sort of anomaly or simulated emergent situation, and I'm not worried about your technique. I'm watching how you react. How do you handle this? Can the person that you're teaching look at you as an example of how to handle something like this? Or are you just going to start panicking, and they're going to start panicking, and then what are we teaching?
Yeah.
So it's a very important quality that I look for.
So this might be using checklists,
of course,
particularly being familiar with the checklist for emergency operations and the like, going through a methodical way of dealing with it, fuel, air, spark, and the like, if the engine quits and the like, quickly looking for a place to land and turning towards that place to land if you experience a simulated engine failure and the like. These would be things that I would imagine you, and certainly I do as well when I'm flying with a client, to make sure that they understand how to operate the airplane in an emergent situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So one of the things that stuck with me throughout most of my flying career is very, very early on, when I was a brand new student pilot, I was maybe a few lessons in. My wife's dad flew a King Air C-90 for a while. and I got to go to one of his recurrent training sessions at SimCom with him. And for those who have never been to these training sessions, initial or recurrent, you know, it's you're thrown into the fire. You're given all sorts of emergency situations, engine failing, gears not coming down, and a simulator's a wonderful place for this to happen because we know that we're going to be safe at the end of the day. And he was flying an instrument approach, and the gear wouldn't come down. And I'm over there as this student pilot who knows nothing going, oh my God, what are we going to do? You know, we've only got so long to get the gear down. And he just goes around. And he goes around and he executes the misapproach and he goes back out, gets some vectors, and okay, well now let me pull out the checklist and troubleshoot this. We're not falling out of the sky. Why do we have to accomplish this between point A and point B when we've got all the time in the world, as long as we've got gas in the tanks, to fix this issue? And that has always stuck with me throughout my career, is that before you react to a situation, you've just got to ask yourself, do we have time? Are we falling out of the sky? The answer to that is yes or no, and then we can go out and troubleshoot as necessary.
Don't make it more of an emergency than it already is.
The ability to react under pressure and to just sit and think for a minute before you do something says a lot about you as a pilot.
Yeah. So I noticed I fly Bonanza and Barons a lot, and the older model POH, Pilot Operating Handbook, had in a section for emergency operations, and the manual extension of the landing gear was in that section. The newer models of Bonanza, their POH has emergency gear or manual extension of landing gear in the unusual. It's not in the emergency section anymore, and it isn't. It's not an emergency. It's You've got time as long as you've got fuel in the tank and decent weather and happy controller that will help you with your situation. You got plenty of time to crank the gear down and make a safe landing out of what could have otherwise been a tragic landing.
That's right.
And the like. So don't make more of an emergency than there actually is. And so that's something that I imagine you train your instructors to do,
of course,
and look for that as a quality in them, and hopefully pass that on to the students to whom you give training. So that's a very important takeaway, and one that I learned some time ago, and I try and make sure that the clients I fly with that they have the same attitude. So do you keep records of the students that you and your staff recommend to DPEs for a check ride? What's the so-called pass rate? In other words, you recommend them to a DPE and they do the check ride and they either pass or they don't pass. And do you have a record of your of how well you're doing with DPEs? We
do. We take that very seriously. And as a company that specializes in advanced training, we don't do much private pilot training. We really specialize in instrument, commercial CFI. We take that pass rating very seriously. So ours is in the 90th percentile. Perfection is not the standard.
Right. And perfection is almost impossible to, if you do a lot of candidates and applicants.
Well, sure.
Yeah, but 90% is worthy of note.
Yes, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We care very deeply about that. And, we get a lot of feedback from local DPEs in the area as to, how do we compare to other schools and to other training providers. And it's tough to see that the number's low, Ron.
Is it? How low?
The number's low. 60% is a good number.
60%.
And CFIs aren't taking the job seriously because they're holding on to the idea that this is a stepping stone to the next phase in the career.
Yeah, let me go back to that. Make sure that we understand this. This is significant. So DPEs who take these applicants from Brandon or from myself or another instructor, and they ask them to go through a check ride and see that they can perform to the standards in the Airman Certification Standards. Very clearly written out. These are the things that you need to know. These are the risks that you need to understand and be able to mitigate. And these are the skills that you have to perform to within these limits.
That's right.
I mean, you couldn't make it more clear, I don't think, than the Airman Certification Standards.
That's right.
Anyone preparing for a check ride, they have to look at those. And, of course, not everyone's going to have a perfect day when they do their check ride, and that's understood, of course.
Sure.
But they should be able to methodically do all of those things within the standards, plus or minus 100 feet, plus or minus 10 degrees, plus or minus 10 knots, or whatever it is for that particular rating. But DPEs tell us that only 60% of the people that come to them supposedly ready for a check ride actually pass on their first go. Whoa, that is pathetically low, isn't it?
It is very low.
It is low. So some of those are pilots just having a bad day. And I've had a bad day or two,
Sure.
and I'm sure you have.
We all have.
Pilots do. But there's not 40% of the pilots that go there that have a bad day. There is likely a large percentage of those who just have not been trained well.
That's right.
Have not been trained well. So quality of instruction is a really, really big thing. Now, if we equate quality of instruction, quality of flying, to safety, what are our chances of having safe pilots that we're about to release into the world?
That's right.
That's kind of
That's
scary. This world in which we fly, to include Brandon and Ron, I don't want some yahoo out there that's going to run into me and do something foolish and the like. So it is in my best interest, as well as Brandon's, to have quality pilots, quality instruction. So I'm not sure what we do to fix that. A dedication on the part of the business owner, in your case.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
say, I'm going to provide quality instruction.
That's right. And most of that bears with the CFI. You should want to do well. You should want to do as well as you can. You should never send somebody for a check ride until you're reasonably sure that it's going to have a successful outcome. But check ride aside, you should never be sending anybody for a check ride until you know that that person can put their entire family on that plane and you don't have to worry about anything going wrong.
That's an interesting safety aspect to a measure, if you will. Am I confident in that this person, would I be willing to let this person take my family
That's right.
on a ride in
That's right.
this airplane? And that's a high standard. That's a high
right.
standard because I care about my loved ones, as you do, as all of us do, I'm sure. So if you can say, this is a major issue that I want to make sure that you're going to be able to fly the airplane safely and efficiently, that I'd be willing to let my family go. That's a big measure, isn't it?
It is. And a lot of the times, the excuse you'll get was, oh, the CFI was under a lot of pressure to sign me off. Or I knew he wasn't going to be ready, but I had to sign him off anyway. He's just been flying with us too long. Well, there's a problem there. We should never be reaching that point, and you should never sign somebody off for a check ride until you're sure that, or reasonably sure that it's going to be successful.
Exactly, because it reflects on you as the
That's
instructor,
right.
doesn't it?
And most importantly, we don't want people flying around that skirted by.
Exactly. As it turns out, the knowledge test that we have to take before we can do the check ride, the knowledge test, we only have to get 70%. And so I sometimes worry about that. I'm up there flying and there's some other people on there. All they had to do is get 70% on their exam.
That's right.
They really know their stuff. I hope they do. So I got a lot of trust and faith in that and the like. So I was going to ask, so how do you evaluate your instructors after they've been on your staff for a while to assure that they're giving quality training and safety is paramount to everything they do? What kind of reviews do you do on your flight instructors?
Well, one of the most important things is I've cultivated an environment where you can always ask myself or another instructor for help. No two people learn the same way. No two people teach the same way. So, hey, we've got this person who's really struggling with landings. I've thrown all I can at him. I need some help. Can you come fly with him? Can the other instructor give a different perspective? And that's a really important component of our business because it kind of checks everybody's pride and ego at the door. Because the last thing you would want to think is, oh my gosh, I'm going to get in some sort of trouble. I'm not teaching this person. No, none of that. I mean, this is a group effort. It's a community effort, and so it's very important that is conveyed. And it allows us to step in. It's great for the student because they get somebody else's perspective, and they're able to piece together information that they learn from multiple different sources, but at the end of the day, still get a pretty standardized and quality product.
Yeah. So there's really no room for my pride as a CFI.
That's right.
Well, if I can't teach you, you're just not going to be able to learn it at all.
That's right.
Really, what we need to do is put the pride away, leave it at the doorstep, as you mentioned, and let's see if there's someone else that can maybe explain it to them in a different set of words, a different set of motions and the like. And what we're really both dedicated for is that student being successful. And that's what we want. We want that student to be successful and safe. And the sooner they get to their check ride and get on with the better it is for all of us.
That's right.
We got other students to go on to it, so
That's
we don't
right.
need to worry about that. So I think that's an important thing. So, and I do that occasionally as well. I'll have a student towards instrument rating, not really getting it. I'll have them go to the simulator maybe with John Tenney, or go fly with another instructor and the like. And then there's been a few of them that I just have to say, look, I don't think this is for you, maybe, but that's pretty rare. I do
very
think
rare.
I can generally help people to get to their check ride and the like. Well, that's good. You've got a quality organization here, and I'm glad that you stress quality of instruction, review of the instructors' qualifications and their technique, and then also safety being foundational in everything we do. If we don't turn out safe pilots, we have really shirked our duties. You mentioned earlier about diversification. So you said if you're looking at, say, 2 candidates that come to you wanting to be hired as a flight instructor, and one of them has the 251 hours of experience and just a CFI certificate where the signature is still wet, they're trying to dry off the signature before they show it to you, versus someone that's got 600 hours or 800 hours. That's pretty easy. You know, you're going to go with the one that most likely that has the more experience. That would be good. But if you got 2 candidates both at the 600 or 800 hour level, and one of them has minimal experience, mostly in light single engine aircraft, and another one that has more diversified portfolio of several different aircraft to include high performance retractable gear and the like, and maybe a glider rating or a seaplane rating or whatever. What do you see in that person that you don't see in the one with a minimal, very little diversity?
Well, sure. Well, you know, it's important to note that, in my opinion, as an employer, as a pilot, your diversification is always going to say more about you than the number that's in your total time column. If you have 300 hours and I have 600 hours, but of your 300 hours, 30% has been in something high performance and 20% has been in something retractable gear, and all of mine is the same, and I've been flying circles around the pattern, what makes me more qualified than you?
Nothing, I guess.
Nothing at all, right? Or let's take that a step further. You've got 1,200 hours and somebody else has 600 hours. But of that 600 hours, more than half has been in something that's not your standard trainer. You're no more qualified than that person having 1,200 hours.
Exactly.
So that shows me that you want to learn, that you're dedicated, that you're capable of learning. I don't know if you're capable of learning if you have 1,200 hours in the same airplane.
Yeah.
Right? So diversification is very important if you want to get ahead.
Indeed. And learning, I always tell clients I fly with and fellow pilots, I'm a perpetual student of aviation.
Of course.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of hours, both flying and instruction. That doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. What really makes difference is the next hour that I'm going to fly.
That's right.
How am I going to do that efficiently? How am I going to do that safely? And what can I learn in that next hour?
Every time you turn the key, you should be checking high quality boxes. Nighttime, cross country, high performance, PIC. If you're just going to fly around in the pattern in the right seat and do the safety pilot thing it's a waste of time.
Yep. You're right. There's nothing much that you're going to learn in something like that. Wow, this time with you, Brandon, has gone by very fast. We've learned a lot about your business and how you select flight instructors and how you assure that they're going to provide safety and quality training to the clients that you have. And this is wonderful that you're doing this and that you have a high standard for quality and safety. I wish you the best in your continued business operations here as you turn out more and more advanced students and the like. So stay tuned after we finish this segment. There is a code that you're going to get so that you can get Wings credit for listening to this presentation. So stay tuned. For the Florida Aviation Network, I'm Ron Timmermans. We're broadcasting live and in the clear from our studios in Oviedo. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned. There's another segment coming up.